Hi, I'm Jack Beers, and I'm the co-leader of Dynamic Parish. A couple of years ago, I started a youth group at a local parish where I live. And on the first day, I asked them a question. I said, "What do you think about the Mass?" And their response totally surprised me. And it wasn't because they said something really profound. It was because almost in unison, they responded with the same word: boring. Now, if you have spent any time with teens in recent years, that's not a surprising thing to you. So I wanted to take a deeper dive into what they actually meant by the Mass is boring. So I asked a couple of questions, and this is what it came down to. They had never had a powerful encounter with God at Mass. There are a number of tragic things about this, but one of the most tragic things is that for 2,000 years, the Mass has been the central experience for Catholics. The central experience for them to come to Mass on Sunday and reconnect with God and reconnect with one another and open their minds and their hearts and their souls to what God might have to say into their life, so that God could fill them with all the strength and the courage and the energy and enthusiasm they need to be the men and women that God created them to be. So the question then becomes, if the Mass has been this way for 2,000 years, and God has shown up for 2,000 years to speak directly to his people, to guide them, encourage them, and help them, has he just suddenly stopped in the 21st century? Or has it just simply become more and more difficult for us to hear the voice of God in our lives? Let me put it to you this way. In 1939, there was a famous Christian author, C.S. Lewis, and he was tasked with writing a series of newspaper articles. And he chose as the forum for the articles a letter from a senior devil to a junior devil, coaching the junior devil how to corrupt mankind. And in one of the letters, the senior devil basically says to the junior devil, "Hey, you've forgotten the plan." The junior devil had been trying to come up with all these crazy, creative ideas to corrupt mankind, and the senior devil says, "Hey, you don't need all these crazy, creative ideas. You just need to stick to the plan, and the plan is simple. Create so much noise in the man's life that he can't hear the voice of his God." And the senior devil went on further to say, our plan is to create so much noise in the universe that mankind loses himself and loses his God. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of noise in our culture. And if we don't begin to open our minds and our hearts to the idea that God has something deeply personal to say to us each and every single Mass, not only are we going to say that the Mass is boring, but we're going to lose ourselves and we're going to lose our God. But fortunately for us, our lives change when our habits change. And so our experience of the Mass can change if our Mass habits change. And that's what this is all about. This is something called the Mass Journal. The Mass Journal in and of itself is not a life-changing habit. What's a life-changing habit is what you do with the Mass Journal. So you're getting this book today not just because we want you to have this journal, but because we want you to start engaging with it in a powerful way. So next Sunday, we're inviting you to come to Mass and come into the pew and sit down and get into a prayerful state, whether that's sitting or kneeling for you. Get into a prayerful state and ask God a question that's written on the back of this book. And the question is, God, show me one way in which I can become a better version of myself this week. Now, sometimes that'll be the question that you ask, but other Sundays, it'll be something more deeply personal to you. You'll say, God, I have this procedure this week and I'm totally anxious about it. Please show me one way in this Mass in which you can encourage me to have great courage this week as I go through this. And so you'll ask this question or a deeply personal question, and then you listen. You listen to the readings, you listen to the homilies, you listen to the rhythm of the Mass, you listen to the quiet, you listen to the silence, you listen to the prayers, you listen to the people around you. And when you hear that one thing that God is trying to say to you, you write it down. Not 20 things, not 30 things, not 100 things, just that one thing that God is trying to say to you, you write it down. Now, when I say that God's going to speak to you, I don't mean that this big, booming, thunderous voice is going to come down and say something directly to you. No, I mean that at some point in the Mass, if you listen, and you listen with your heart, that God is going to stir your heart. He's going to encourage you with something, or he's going to provide a piece of wisdom to you, or he's going to speak into your life in a deeply personal way. And that's the thing that you write down in your Mass journal. Now, I hope you don't just do that. I hope that you take this Mass journal and you write down that one thing that God's saying to you in Mass, and you take it out in your life, and you have a great conversation with your spouse or with your kids or with a friend of yours, and you share what God had said to you in Mass that Sunday. So not only could it be a great source of spiritual nourishment for you personally, but it becomes a great conversation and experience for your family, for your community, of God speaking into your lives. I also hope that 10 years from now you have this journal and you look back into it and you open it up and you read through the first year and you say, wow, look at the way that God moved in my life, not just in this first year, but in all 10 years. I hope this because the possibilities are incredible for what can happen for you and for your parish if you adopt this one life-changing habit. Imagine for one moment if next Sunday you're coming to Mass and you're sitting in the pew and you're listening to the readings and the homilies and the prayers at Mass, and you're writing down the one thing that God says to you, but then you see all the other people in your congregation, in your community, writing down that one thing that God is saying to them. Now, people could say a lot of things about your worship that Sunday, but one thing they probably can't say is that Mass is boring, or that God isn't moving in that community. I hope this Mass journal, at least today, is an invitation to you, an invitation to your entire parish to open up your mind, your heart, and your soul to the idea that God has something deeply personal He wants to say to you every Sunday at Mass. On behalf of our entire team at Dynamic Catholic, I want you to know that we're praying for you, we're praying for your parish, and we're praying that you hear the voice of God in your life each and every Sunday and respond to it with incredible generosity. And remember, be bold, be Catholic.